Well, good morning. We're going to do a short little response to a little discussion between Ian McGilchrist, Bence Nene, Betty Sue Flowers, and Anil Anasthaswamy, Mary Jane Rubenstein host. It was this get together about can we ever really know ourselves? So I put a funny little response in initially one before it began that yes, we can, but it's not what we think it is. And I find it funny because I was actually just waiting to see Ian McGilchrist's response, and it was very similar to my own. I really do recommend it. It's worth taking a look at. It was, Ian McGilchrist is a psychiatrist and a writer, best known for his book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of a Western World, a former consultant psychiatrist at the Bethlehem Royal. His new book, The Matter with Things, explores the ways to truth and what is true, right? I've talked about this quite a bit. That's why I find it interesting, right? Truth, true being an agreement, a temporary one, usually at best. What's interesting is in this clip, it was the discussion, can we ever really know ourselves? Opened by Bruce Nene. I apologize if I get that wrong. He's a professor of philosophy and a research professor at the University of Antwerp, but he's also worked as a film critic. He's written books on aesthetics, perception, and action, including a book called Aesthetics, a very short introduction. I think it's apropos, since he quotes someone, and he even goes so far as to say, well, I'm going to use a call to authority here, and so, and he fails. So he says, this quote was, I can't remember who he said was the quote, because the quote is terrible too, because the quote was wrong and his understanding of the concept is wrong because he wouldn't have used the quote. So the quote is, if a caterpillar were to know itself, then it would never become a butterfly. So there's the failure I've been talking about. It seems that people don't think for themselves. They're just passively accepting what others are telling them or teaching them. Right? Because think about it, if the caterpillar truly knew itself, it would know its potential as a butterfly, not risk it. Right? In Japanese, that's shikaku, Chinese hongaku. It's to understand or to acquire knowledge that was already present but was obscured or you weren't awakened to, very similar to the bodhicitta in Sanskrit, kenosis in Greek. There's quite a few. Jung would say probably this idea of Zella online. I see reference to William James and his radical, not directly his radical empiricism. It's weird that they don't talk a lot about that. But this idea of tapping into something meta, something extrasensory, as it were. This acquired knowledge and understanding. There was a word that just came up recently that meant exactly that. Yes. It's German, actually. They attribute it to Kant, but it goes much deeper than Kant. It's Anschauung. And if you look at the word Anschauung, hold on here, let me get it, because my pronunciation of German is terrible, especially when I'm speaking English. Not that much better when I speak French, though, let's be honest.
Anschauung.
Anschauung. And it's got a long W. Anschauung. So it can mean opinion, but it can mean contemplation, an idea, a notion, a view. And this is where German's beautiful, just like French, sometimes English fails, that one word can mean all of the above. I've told you about this before, that Nietzsche never really opened up to me until I started to look at some of these, not all of it in German, but these important, salient ideas like man is the valuator. Other translations are he's the evaluator. But when you actually look at the German, it opens it up and you understand it means both. He's the valuator, the evaluator. He weighs and judges, applies his value. Same as Willenmacht, commonly translated as will to power, but no, propel, more than power. So what propels your will? So here we are again, right? Because if a caterpillar were to know itself, it would know its own potential. Right? That's what I call depth philosophy. I just came up with that listening to this when I realized how important philosophy is, right? Because it can explain to this gentleman what we're talking about here. And really, he needs to have that sense of doubt that Charles Sanders Peirce talks about, that maybe you don't get it, bruv, right? Maybe someone else gets it better than you. Maybe your call to authority is a fail because maybe who you consider an authority is a failure, right? So have that strong sense of doubt. The tetralemma, the cetoscoti, this idea that maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's both, maybe it's something that we'll never get to understand, or maybe it's an answer to a question we'll never understand or have the opportunity to ask. Have a sense of doubt. But on that.